What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of A24, the podcast that takes a look at the A24 library 24 minutes at a time. I'm Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are talking about the what could have beens and the what maybes as we discuss the best movie of the year, Past Lives.
Best movie of the year, baby. Let's go.
I got
Nora,
throw a little question mark in there. We'll
maybe. Who knows?
Tip the hat. Yep, we'll see. Let's go.
Nora and Hae-sung, two deeply connected childhood friends, are wrest apart after Nora's family emigrates from South Korea. 20 years later, they are reunited for one fateful week as they confront notions of love and destiny. Spoilers are ahead for Past Lives. It goes nationwide the day that this podcast comes out, June 23rd. I was lucky enough, I got to see it a week ago. It came to Portland a little bit early. Ben literally just got out of the movie like 1 hour ago for the very first time.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, if you haven't seen Past Lives yet, we will spoil it. So please, like, table this, add it to a playlist, whatever you got to do, because I feel like this movie deserves to be unspoiled if you're going into it. I think that is definitely the best way to watch it. But like I said, Ben, you just got out for the very first time. I want to kick off the conversation. I want to know, you said ? Best movie of the year. I want to know where you're at on Past Lives, just so we can start this conversation.
I feel like I'm a victim of my own, like,
oh no, we did it again.
Yeah, but no, here's the thing though. No, like I still really liked this movie. As people who may have watched our close episode will recall, I was like very emotional, very teary. And I honestly expected this to be the same exact thing. I expected, like, I grabbed extra napkins when we got like our popcorn and drinks. I'm like, I'm gonna be a fucking wreck. Like I just know it. And while I did like feel emotion, you know, like I'm not like dead or anything like that. I just
not
like
a hollow man.
I didn't shed a tear the whole movie, but like
no tears,
not one. No, but
did one like begin?
It went down
to form?
And it's like went right back up.
Right back.
No, I mean we'll get into it, but the closest I got like was the very end for sure. Like that was a perfect ending. I have like zero notes. I have nothing bad at all to say about it. Like this isn't like, you know, previous movies where I've gone in with too high expectations. As a victim of my own circumstance.
Speaking of previous movies that you went in possibly too high expectations. I
like it.
I don't know how to show it on camera, but yeah, it's a Beau's Afraid shirt.
So yeah, I don't know. It was great. Like it's such a good movie. It's so well done. The pacing is slow, but I think it's intentional, and it was noticeable, but didn't bother me. You know what I mean? It was just like, all right, cool. We're taking our time. I didn't know what to expect with like the story structure. I thought we were going to get a lot more flashback to understand her relationship with Hae-sung, but I guess in a way the movie is all flashbacks. It's like we start out like kind of towards the end, you know, and then do the record scratch freeze frame. Probably wondering how I got here, like, you know, like, but I thought that was really cool.
I mean, kind of, because she kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit and like looks right at us.
And it's so well done though, because it's people who are like, you playing that game. Like I used to work at the airport. We would do it all the time where you just look at people and you're like, how do they know each other? Like, what is
their
here,
story?
You know? And it was really cool to see that here. I loved it. I thought it was great. So yeah, I don't know. It was just like, I feel weirdly disappointed that I wasn't a fucking wreck, but it's a perfect movie. Like everything's great about it. I honestly have zero critiques about the movie. I thought it was so well done. I thought it was beautifully shot. I loved all the performances. It was cool to see our guy like not back in like the 1900s or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah, this guy's like he can also play Call of Duty. That's awesome.
Modern day.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a good time. I was just like, unfortunately for so much of the movie, just like one of these things is gonna like just be by gut punch, and like it never really came through. I'll talk about how close I got. There were some, you know, that we have in our True Cinema that we'll talk about, but great movie. It was awesome, and I'm just disappointed I didn't cry. Like that's my review.
I'm also disappointed you didn't cry. I was really sad. I had a feeling though, because like you got out of the movie and we were scheduling to do our pod, and you didn't say anything regarding the movie, and I was like, this may not bode well.
Yeah.
I will juxtapose you and say, so I saw it for the first time a week ago and saw it opening night, sold out showing, probably 80 people there. Everybody, including myself, just absolutely obliterated at the end of the movie. Like, you would like look around and people were just like, oh my God. They were like, what? People just didn't like know what to do. And like, that is such a collective experience, right? Like, everybody is like, oh my God, like this movie broke me. So I go again tonight. I saw it a second time, which quite honestly, speaking of, you know, especially in 2023, but like going to see a movie for a second time in the theaters, considering how much content we make on this podcast, how much content I make outside of this podcast, life in general, is a really strenuous thing to do. And I did it because I love this movie that much. And I knew that I needed to sit with it a second round. And I cried more this time tonight. But the whole point in telling you all of this is to say that the woman next to me, there was like 60 or 65 people, almost a sold out show again, like 1 week after the movie's already come out in the city. The woman next to me, the final scene is happening, right? And it's like this 7 or 8 minutes of exceptionally solemn, slow movement and realization. And it's quite silent. And I just like hear someone next to me absolutely like hyperventilating basically.
Damn.
And I'm just like, oh my God, this really got, like, I thought I was crying. This really got somebody. And it was the woman next to me. And she just like was a mess. And I heard her meet her friends out in the hallway afterwards. And she goes, yeah, that was a really good movie. And I'm just like, yeah, you're bawling your eyes out. Of course it was.
Putting it lightly. I just want to say quickly, like, I've complained a lot about my theater experiences. It was so good tonight. Like, no problems at all. There's no talking. There's no phone. And honestly, we were sold out. Like, I think this is probably like a 60 to 70 person theater, something like that. And yeah, like there was like some seats in the very front row that weren't filled, but for the most part, you know, it was awesome to see that. Yeah. Like, we actually traded seats with people because this group of 3 came in and they had to like buy like 2 in the row in front of us and then 1 right next to us. And I was like, oh, it's a bummer they have to split up. So like, you know, Ashley and I kind of traded them. It's like, well, you guys sit together. We'll go down there. But like, that's how full it was. People were like walking in to buy tickets and they had to like sit different places. So
and they were willing to do that. They still bought those tickets.
Yeah, they still bought the tickets. Yeah. And they wanted to see it that bad. So it was cool. I just want to comment on that. Like, we had a really good theater experience this time.
This is fascinating because I do want to take a sidebar real quick before we continue with the movie, because we talked about it on the pod a few times. Obviously, over the past few years, like, it's inevitable to talk about the business strategy of A24.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it a ton and we don't like devote total episodes to it. But it is interesting because, and this could be a very good place to maybe lead this conversation. First off, last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once came out in March. It had a very similar release format where it came to LA and New York first. It then came to additional cities like Portland. I was lucky enough to see it before you saw it. And then it expanded nationwide. Even after that, I think it took about 6 weeks to go completely nationwide. Past Lives, very similar. It's been in LA and New York for like a month already, out of Sundance 6 months ago, and came to Portland a week before it came to Salt Lake City. Incredibly frustrating for us, people who are trying to make a podcast and trying to be among the first people to see it, right? But sold out theater for me, basically, you know, a week split. You've got a sold out theater tonight. I can only assume this is doing absolute dynamite business in theaters pretty nationwide. People know about it. They want to see it. They hear the buzz. Where do you stand on like this? Like, it's pretty personally frustrating to get it late, but also this is really good A24 business. Could this be like their Oscar campaign? Could they be figuring out this is how we change the game for Oscars?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that because it like certainly like generated a lot of buzz. I mean, people have been asking for this movie for a long time. You know, it felt like we've been waiting for it forever. And even, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the Past Lives Twitter, you're like now playing nationwide, and they accidentally used the wrong text, and it was supposed to be like at select
and they had
theaters,
to redo it.
and people were calling them out like, "What the fuck are you talking about? This is not in my theater. Do not."
They
say
were
it's
too
playing
hyped alone.
Like, yeah, I was just like, "Are you kidding me? Like, don't say this." Like, how long have you and I mean, people could probably go back a month on this show and hear
oh my
us
god,
talk about
every
the fact
episode
that,
we're like, next week we're covering Past Lives,
like,
and then we've just been kicking it down the road.
Yeah, it's like, and then you finally saw it, and it's like, I don't know, whenever Salt Lake gets it, like, we'll finally watch it. So I'm glad that we're here. I do think it's smart though. It generated a lot of buzz. I think it's going to just play really well. And if, these opening nights for each of our respective cities seem like they've been sold out, and I feel like that's just going to be the same everywhere. Plus, I mean, we both follow a lot of like film critics and stuff on Twitter, and so many of them like, Greta Lee's got to be in the consideration for Best Actress, and this has got to be in there for Best Picture, like all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a super smart decision from them, as personally how frustrated I was to have to wait for the actual nationwide release. Like I was honestly contemplating coming out to Portland just to watch it. So I was like,
I know you sent me the text. You're like,
this.
If it needs to be done, I'll do it.
Got to do it.
I just want to start the campaign right now. Sad boy John Magaro for Best Supporting Actor for 2023. Dude can just be the saddest like little guy possible.
He's so good.
So good. We'll obviously get into it as we go. A couple things that I wanted to mention off the top. I guess I'll quickly follow. I do think this is like the first Oscar campaign movie of the year. I do think like this is the beginning of that. Like, okay, cool. They A24 did it last year with Everything Everywhere. They're going to do it again this year with Past Lives coming out in June, a little bit later, but it does seem like they are pretty firm in their idea of changing how campaigning is done for the Oscars and building that slow release hype over 6 months or 8 months or 9 months. I'd be really curious here in 9 months on the pod, like what we're talking about when it does come to Oscar season. And obviously it does sound a bit premature because the Oscars were 3 months ago or 4 months ago. And like we just saw them happen. But absolutely, like you said, like Best Picture, Best Lead Actress, Original Screenplay. I can absolutely, without a doubt, see this being in the conversation. So Celine Song, this is her debut film. She is a playwright, now turned filmmaker. Quickly, you sent me a tweet that basically says her next movie is already reported to begin filming in September, titled Materialists. I haven't seen this confirmed anywhere else, so it might or might not be true, but I would say that it's in good faith. Like that makes sense because Past Lives is crushing it. So why wouldn't she just already, like dive into the next thing? This already has me pretty excited.
It would make sense that she would get the green light now just based off the past month of limited release and the reviews and all the feedback that the studio's been getting. I'm sure she's been getting. So it would make sense. They're like, yeah, great. Like do it again. Like do something else. Let's go.
Yeah. And I listened to her interview with Sean Fennessy on The Big Picture. A fascinating interview. Now that, if you've seen the movie, it's definitely worth listening to so you can kind of understand the movie a bit deeper. I think it's really interesting because she does talk about, she previously wrote a spec script like 10 years ago about like these two like step siblings in the world of poker. And so Sean was trying to push her to get that going. So who knows? Materialists could be. I don't know if that's coming to light or not. But she also talks about A24 specifically and how like this brand gave her the freedom and the resources to make this movie the way that it needed to be made and the way that she needed it. So it does make sense with that A24 stamp behind her that she just is a commodity now, is a hot commodity in the film world. I wanted to ask you, Ben, so do you ever think about your past lives? Were you a bird in a past life? Were you a branch? Like what, do you ever contemplate these kinds of things?
Yeah, for sure. Like I somewhat similarly to Nora in this, like I moved states when I was 10 years old. I moved from California to Utah. Okay. And granted, that's not like a trans, oceanic move like she did, but when you're 10, it feels that way. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, this is a whole new world, so to speak. So yeah, there's definitely times in my life for a long time where it's just like, what would it have been like to stay there? Like if I had stayed in California, because while I didn't grow up in like necessarily like bad area by any means, like there was like, gang problems, stuff like that. And people that I was close to in elementary school, I know died like before high school was over, so it's just like,
Dang.
I don't know what that would have been like. Obviously, you have your elementary crushes and, and trying to like,
Yeah.
oh, what if I had able to stay, like kind of very similar to these two. But that's kind of it, just kind of, and I haven't, really thought about it in a long time because so much time has been removed from it. But there's definitely that time in life where I'm just like, should I go back to California? Like, can I pick up where I left off? Like, I thought about going out there for college. Like, that was a big thing. So that's definitely, been part of like, life. I'm assume a lot of people probably experience that. And that's like, in a way, all of what Everything Everywhere is about, right? It was just like all those different branches, so to speak, about like, what if we had made this decision? What if you'd made this decision? Like all those different things that could happen. So it's hard not to play what if, when it comes to certain things. But yeah, I don't know for sure. What about you?
I mean, this movie could definitely fall under the umbrella of like a multiversal film if you want it to, especially with some of that final dialogue from Haesung. Absolutely wild, like to think about that kind of stuff. I mean, I think part of the reason, and there are just certain movies that you watch at a certain time in your life, right? Like when you're going through something or you feel a certain way and that movie just intersects with that kind of perfectly. And there are a handful of those moments in my life. And I think this can be added to that chart of like the right movie at the right time about the right thing. Kind of that materializes like how I internally feel. I think my biggest like what if in life, or like my biggest like past life type of thing is I did move from like a very small town to Portland for college, but like I would have, if I had my shit figured out, I would have much rather moved somewhere else. Like it ended up being a default of like, I wasn't that prepared. So I guess I'm just like moving to the big city in my state kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
And so like pretty consistent. It's like, what if I ended up going to college somewhere else? Like that would have completely changed my trajectory of maybe everything. And I think current day, like I'm in a master's program right now for film and media studies, as you know, as a lot of people know. And so I'm like stuck between in this gray area of like, when I graduate, how do I totally change careers? And do I have to move somewhere and uproot my family and change everything about my life to pursue something in New York potentially, or in LA, or like in another life city, right? So I think like this movie is just like intersecting all of those ideas at the right time in my life to be like, God damn it. Like what, like, what could have been, like what might be, who knows? So I think that's part of the reason that I really do connect to it so much. It is my personal favorite movie of the year so far.
Nice.
I still have Air as my number 2 movie. People be hating on Air for some reason. I think Air is great. The Matt Damon speech, I mean, come on. Good stuff in Air. Have you seen Air yet?
I have not watched Air.
You haven't seen Air?
I haven't seen Air.
Ben, come on.
Do you want to watch Babylon or
so
Air? Which one do you want to watch first?
How about you just watch them both?
Just watch
Double
them
feature.
both?
We can do that.
Should we do like, alphabeted movies, just like Air, Babylon, and then just keep going?
ABC, keep going.
I like it.
So it is my favorite movie of the year. Absolutely. Do you want to break down True Cinema? You want to start going through this movie?
Let's do it.
Or do you have any? Okay, we'll start going through it. I want to start with the opening scene. Obviously, we get this commentary. Now, this type of a scene, this style, is definitely used frequently. I feel like is kind of something that is relied upon in mass movie, storytelling of like we're getting an introduction to these characters from somebody else, kind of setting the stage for us. And we get this couple from across the bar that are playing the best game in the world of like how do these people know each other?
Yeah.
And we get introduced to our characters, and then we take a very harsh like step into the past. What did you think of this opening scene when you first saw it? Because I was a little bit like kind of thrown off the scent a little bit of like, whoa, I didn't know we were gonna like flash forward and then go back. I thought we were just gonna start at the beginning.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice. I liked it. Obviously, it kind of manipulates us in the way that we think, like, how do we end up here? Because as the people are like commentating, it's like, oh, like, you know,
Hmm.
the two Asian people are talking to each other and the white dude's just like sitting there not talking at all. It's like, what's the relationship here? Are they brother and sister? Are they, you know, whatever? And then, you know, like we focus on John Magaro a little bit and he looks, you know, I think it's made to believe like he looks dejected or whatever, that kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But he's just our divine sad boy, and he
John Magaro, Divine Sad
Divine
Boy. Is
Sad
that like
Boy, yeah.
his IG profile?
Yeah, for your consideration on Best Supporting Actor, John Magaro, Divine Sad
Divine
Boy.
Sad Boy.
Let's get it started right now.
That'll sell.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's get those shirts made. Yeah, I thought it was a really cool intro. And it's, yeah, I didn't expect it to go chronological the rest of the way. So it was just such an interesting device to tell the story that way. But I loved the intro quite a bit.
On a second watch, I was absolutely just raptured by the opening because I already knew where we were going. I already knew what was going to happen, right? And so like I feel like the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, interesting. Like what is their relationship? Like
Yeah.
what are we doing?" Because we don't really know based on just the trailers. And then the second time through, I just absolutely adored the very true like juxtaposition that we get from the script of like they could be brother sister and then the white guy could be their tour guide, or Nora and the white guy could be married and then he could be visiting and Hae-sung could be visiting. Like the things that were being commented were exceptionally true. Like
Yeah.
to an outsider, to someone watching it for the first time, like that could actually be their relationship. Like we don't know. And so I thought that was very interesting to tackle both of those kind of avenues that we do pursue through the movie of like, what are their relationships to one another as they're kind of constantly in flux. I loved that. And I loved like the cutback. The thing from their childhood I wanted to bring up was their date. This is where their mom kind of reveals like, okay, they're immigrating to Toronto and basically just wanted to go on this date with Hae-sung to make sure Nora has good memories of their home country and of Seoul and all of this. And then we get a very quick flashback to that very moment later on in the movie. I thought it was exceptionally effective to basically just like have these two kids that are in love and just don't know it, like just around each other. Like that was just their whole world was each other. And I thought that was gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a beautiful scene. It was interesting trying to read Hae-sung's mother's vibe, because it's almost just like I'm glad you're trying to give your daughter good memories, but also this is going to crush my son. You know what I mean?
You're
like,
leaving my kid out to dry.
Yeah, it's just like he's here just to like entertain her, and then he's just going to be like all alone. That's a bummer.
Yeah. So this is interesting because Hae-sung throughout the movie, I mean, talking about John Magaro, sad boy, Hae-sung kind of a sad boy as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's just out getting plastered with his homies, like drinking and kind of like hates his life. Like he doesn't hate his life, but like he doesn't love his life. Like he doesn't have anything that's really pushing him to do more, to be more until he reconnects with Nora, right? So I mean that very specific scene where he wakes up from a night of drinking and his mom is like, "Why are you in such a good mood?"
Yeah.
And like he's just
so
eating
funny.
breakfast.
Yeah.
It is hilarious. This movie is so funny. But like I feel like that moment in life, and you can kind of, it does have a very 3-act structure coming from Celine's song of like, as a play would, of like that decision for Nora's family to emigrate didn't just affect Nora, it affected Hae-sung and like his world and his life and his decisions as well, even though like he was 2 degrees removed from whoever made that decision. You know what I mean? So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to again like draw similarities to my favorite thing I've seen this year with Close is just like, what's it like as an elementary school student or middle school student to lose your best friend because like you're so enmeshed with each other. And I know that was the hardest part for me moving here. It's just like I had my best friends in California and now I have to start over, and all these people have known each other for like their whole lives, you know, and now I've got to like work my way in somewhere. And so I thought about that a lot with Hae Sung, which is like, because we don't see him talk to anybody else like as a kid at all. Like he only talks to her. It's like, oh, what was that like for him now, just to have that person just be gone? It's like, oh, that's and he brings it up later on when we talk about like, you know, that bar scene and just the great line he gives of like, you're a person that leaves, you know, and it's just
that's
like,
who you are.
That's how he sees her. It's like, oh shit, that's what it is for him.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump ahead because there's obviously so many good nuggets in between, but like that very distinct call out of like, Hae Sung is in love with a version of Nora, and Arthur is in love with a version of Nora. And that idea of like, you have to say goodbye to versions of yourself as your life changes, and that could be immeasurably sad and depressing to say goodbye to those things, and realize like that is not the life that you have anymore, and that was not the Inyon that you thought you might have got out of this life, right? 12 years later, we get a cut. We've got Nora living in New York. Hae Sung is in Seoul. He's getting ready to move to China to go take some classes. They're basically just start chatting up on Skype all the time. We get this really, what I thought was not so great the first time I saw it. I was like, what? Like, I just want the meat, you know? Like, I just want the protein of like why we're here. Give me their adult life. And then on the second watch, I was like, this is so sublime. Like they're falling in love over technology throughout the world. Like they're finally coming together, and it is pretty beautiful stuff. And then Nora has to decide to call it quits, basically, because she can't go see him in Seoul for another year. He can't come to New York for another couple of years. And I feel like it's just hurting her too much to like have this big what if like hanging over her head. Like, what if I could go? What if he could come here? What would our life be? That is just too emotional for her. And I really liked it the second time I saw it.
Yeah, it was cool. It was necessary for sure. Because if there was like one maybe critique or something I had from the trailers, as much as it made me like want to see this movie, it was also just like, yeah, she's not 12 anymore though. Like, is this really all based around that? Like, that's kind of nuts to be hung up on that person, you know? So the fact that we get them 12 years later, 24, like talking to each other and building that dynamic, then it's like, okay, now this makes a little bit more sense to why he'd be so hung up on her so much time later. So like 24 years later, whatever. So, it was cool. It was also just like really fun nostalgia of like old MacBooks and Skype and just like
old iPhone screens.
Yeah,
dynamite.
Yeah, it was great to hear those Skype noises and all that kind of shit. So it was really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty rad for sure. Then we go to the Montauk retreat. This is basically where Nora goes to a writing retreat and meets Arthur, and you know, explains the idea of Inyon to him, and you know, says that it's just something that Korean people say to seduce other people. And it is very funny, and it is obviously, you know, opens up so many questions and doors that are later asked upon by Arthur in a very moving bedroom scene, which is kind of unreal. Of like, cool, two writers talking in a bedroom. That sounds real riveting, but like it actually is riveting. Yeah. So I find it very interesting and so powerful that she, in this moment, describes Inyon as just something said to like seduce somebody, and like kind of gives Arthur the go ahead, right? Like gives him the nod, gives him the like, okay, you can kiss me. Let's get this thing on.
Yeah.
And then later when she is talking to Hae Sung at the bar, like Inyon is very meaningful. It's very powerful for both of them. They truly believe about past lives. So at some point in time, like Hae Sung unlocks something in Nora that Arthur doesn't, obviously.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? Like Arthur just ended up being the guy that read all the same books and saw all the same movies and could give good notes about her plays. And that is a really fascinating question to me of like, was it just a right place, right time thing? Or like, would it have been somebody else if it was that place and that time? But I love this Montauk scene, and John McGar is hilarious. He's like, I know I got the worst room in the whole retreat.
Yeah. He's good. It was cool to see how they meet up, and even just when she tells him, like, you have the worst room, right? He's like, yeah, I know that.
I know.
And then like we just kind of hold on her, and then she smiles a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So that's like, that was the first, taste of like their dynamic, and it was really cool to see that.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. I've got the park next scene. So meeting Haesung for the very first time in the park. They just say wow 1,000 times over. The one thing that I want to call out that I noticed this time around was a really interesting dialogue choice that was obviously exceptionally intentional from Celine. That a few moments before this meeting in the park, we've got Nora and Arthur laying in bed, and Arthur is speaking Korean and he is learning. And basically they say, he says, I'm hungry. What am I to do? And very particularly. Then Nora meets Haesung the next scene, and Haesung meets her and basically says, what am I to do? And I find that a really fascinating juxtaposition of like, Arthur's just quote unquote the husband. He just wants chicken wings. What am I to do? I'm a hungry guy.
Yeah.
And then Haesung is like, what am I to do? I just met the love of my life after 12 years of searching for her and wondering what she could be in my life. What am I to do? And it's like that exceptionally same phrase means incredibly different things to two very different people in the same person's life. But very funny scene meeting in the park. And I just love that kind of dialogue juxtaposition between the two guys.
I mean, yes, ditto to all that, but also like I think Greta Lee deserves an Oscar just for like having the best smile in movies right now.
Oh my
like,
gosh!
When she's like, when they're doing the wow, and just like her smile and laugh is like, how could you not like fall in love with that? Like it's so charming. It's a wonderful laugh, great scene, and just so much of this. I know we're talking about it a little bit more, but just like being able to be around someone with talking all the time. Like we get a lot of that here, and it's great. Yeah.
Conversation in front of the carousel. This is important. They have a pretty deep conversation, basically about like their lives apart and their love for each other, that they kind of can't see eye to eye like quite yet.
Yeah.
About like what it means to each of them. I did notice though, every time they're out in public, there are always people making out in the background, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I noticed that too watching. I was like, oh, there's just like always people kissing, like always. Yeah. Whether they're like on the pier or whatever, and there's a couple on the rocks or whatever. Like it was pretty cool to see just that not so subliminal messaging for the audience.
Yeah. Pretty out there. I guess the movie does have like a certain energy where it just kind of like lulls you into being hyper focused on them, of course, obviously. So I didn't necessarily notice that the first go around, but I think it's a wonderful kind of addition. The bedroom conversation I wanted to put on here, very, very specific for two reasons that I really liked this scene. The first reason is that idea of like, is it me or is it like the idea of me? Was I just the guy that showed up at the right time, right? Or would it have been somebody else? Kind of Arthur kind of asks her, and like that whole idea of like what life could have been. And then he calls out a thing that Nora does. She dreams in another language. And he says, you dream in a language I can't understand. There's a part of you that I can never access. And that ripped me apart. It just absolutely blew me away, because it's like, you're right. Like that scene comes hot off the heels of her speaking about Haesung and how Korean he is. And like, there is just something there that Arthur will never, ever be able to access in Nora. And it's like that Korean childhood that she had. He's just the white guy from New York City. And like, that is just absolutely depressing to me, that like, our sad boy is just getting sadder because she dreams in Korean. And
that he admits that's why he's like secretly trying to learn, not secretly learning the language, but that's the reason why he's chosen to. He's like, I want to understand this stuff, which also though made me wonder, especially in that last scene, like how much Korean do you think he knows? Like, do you think he was picking up on anything
question.
that they were talking about at the bar? Like,
This is a great question.
because he's like, she jokingly, when Haesung's like, oh, how's his Korean? She's like, oh, it's bad. You know, and then they meet and he's like, his Korean's actually good. You know, like he actually like,
Yeah.
good. This is good Korean. So it made me wonder. It's like, oh, like he must be able to pick up on some of this stuff. Like, is he not necessarily playing dumb, but just not interjecting in their conversation? Or, you know, as someone who I used to be like fluent in Portuguese, and like if I read it, I can like understand it. But if I hear it, it's like I can just like, now it's been so long that I just like pick out words here and there. You know what I mean? And that's basically kind of what I was thinking of. I was like, I wonder if he's just like, oh, okay, that's love. That's the, you know, like that's the, trying to
certain
piece
words
together their conversation without being able to understand it. I just like, maybe that's me reading into it, but that's kind of what I saw. I was like, I wonder if he's just like keeping it cool. It's like, I'm gonna let them have their conversation because again, they haven't seen each other in like 20 something years. Yeah. So whatever, but I could be wrong. Maybe he just like didn't understand any of it, but we know that his Korean is decent according to Haesung. You know what I mean? So it's like
decent enough.
Yeah.
Wow. I had never thought of that. I want to pose your question with another question of like, that I thought during the movie that I really wanted to ask you. So when they are at the bar, is the right move for Arthur to come along? Is that like the right decision for Arthur? Because he is kind of playing chaperone a little bit, right? He's trying to kind of make sure nothing goes off the rails. Even though Nora says like, do you know me? I would never up and leave you and move to Seoul. I do think that like there is that part of him that is like, okay, but you might. And so like, maybe I go with you, but also like, is his presence there like necessary? Is it hindering anything? Is it helping anything? I just think it's an interesting, dinner conversation question.
Yeah.
Do you think he should have been there or should he have stayed home?
I mean, it comes off of them having dinner and stuff, so it makes sense he's there. Not that he couldn't have just been like, all right, I'm going to go home, I'll see you when you come back kind of thing. But it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. It made sense to me. It felt natural that they were all just still together since it's coming off of the pasta, the pasta dinner, which is cool. But we leave the husband at the bar for a while, and we were just on close-ups of Nora and Haesung, like for a good few minutes. Like we don't get another group shot until Nora's probably in the bathroom or whatever. So it's like, I almost think like as much as they can, like they've forgotten that he's there. Like they're so like blinders on in this conversation with each other while never really forgetting that he's there. But yeah, I don't know. It's like as free as they can. That's why they're speaking in Korean, because they can be as sincere and intimate as possible without, crossing any lines or anything like that. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it made sense to me why he was there, but it does pose the question of like, how different would this have been if he wasn't there? Because we saw what happened before the Uber, you know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting.
It is pretty brutal going through that scene because, I mean, that's the moment that Nora and Haesung really connect and really dive into the idea of like, who are we to each other? Who are we for each other? And, Haesung says like, being here makes me have a lot of weird thoughts about like, what is the life that we could have had? I don't remember specifically what is said. I just know that like, I ended up getting really, really sad. I think Haesung is talking about like what Nora means to him as like, could we have had kids? Would we have moved across the world or like whatever it might have been? But the camera is on Arthur. The camera is focused on him. And I think that plays so smartly into the idea of like, both of these guys are asking themselves very similar questions. They might be on different planes of like understanding or like how deep they want the meaning to be.
Yeah.
But they are both people that Nora loves and they love Nora, but just different versions of her. And I thought that scene played really, really smart. And that's the part where we get like them talking about all of what their past lives could have been. Were they, a political marriage or did they cheat on each other or were they just like a bird and a branch? And their physical play with each other is so sweet. It is just god awfully full of tension. Like it is designed to do that. But like when Nora just like hits him on the forearm, and it's just like, oh my God, it's kind of brutal, to be honest. It's very thriller like.
Yeah, I wanted more reaction shots from Arthur at that time. Like, what are you thinking, dude? Because like this is when I'm like, all right, I need a double now. Like this is when I'm like, I would rather
Barkeep
be
hit
playing.
Me again.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd rather be at home playing Spider-Man right now. So I'm gonna bounce. You guys do whatever you're gonna do. Like I gotta go.
Shout out Arthur for just keeping with it on the Xbox play though. Good for my guy. Like, you know, your wife just got home from seeing her childhood sweetheart, and she's like, yeah, he flew 13 hours to come see me. And he's like, sick. I'm just going to keep playing Call of Duty.
Yep,
like, let me drink my LaCroix real quick.
Yeah. This match will be over soon, but I can't pause it. So,
two more true cinema moments. The final tracking shot. Basically, we get, 5 or 7 minutes of a tracking shot. Nora comes out of her apartment. We're moving left to right. She comes out with Haesung, walks him to his Uber. Basically, we're walking back in time with Nora and Haesung, right? We're going back in time. They arrive to their spot. They wait 2 minutes for the Uber. 2 just painstaking moments or minutes of what is going to happen, of a will they, won't they type situation that, again, felt like a thriller. I was just like kind of breathless of like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This is the defining moment. Are we giving into our idea, or are we sustaining like our current lives? What are we doing? What did you think, or I guess, did you want something specific to happen in that moment? Because they don't kiss, they briefly hug, and then we'll talk about kind of their final dialogue to each other. But in my eyes, they absolutely nailed this ending, because if they kissed, it would have just, I think, totally sunk the ship.
Yeah, I agree with that. Everything happened like it needed to, but there was so much tension there, because even as like they do the slow turn till they're facing each other, there are even moments where it looks like Haesung's like about to step forward. He's like his body kind of moves. It's like, oh shit, he's gonna do it. He's gonna go for it. They're gonna kiss. She's gonna reject him. Like I don't know what was gonna happen, but and then suddenly you hear the audio, for the cab, pulling up. Like, oh shit, okay, cool. This is a real interesting development here. So I thought it played perfectly, like it needed to. I understand why it was shot the way it was, but I wish it could have just been one long take until she goes all the way back to the house. But
I agree.
I know we needed like to see Haesung's, the close up of him and stuff like that. So I get that, but like, oh man, this probably could have worked really well as like one long shot. So brilliant scene though.
I agree with that. They get their final dialogue when the Uber shows up, and basically, to some extent, Haesung pretty much asks her, like, do you know what we would have been in another past life? And kind of mentions, like, maybe this is a past life. Yeah. Maybe we are something else to each other in a different lifetime. And they pretty much just say, like, I don't know what we are or what we would have been to each other in another past life. And then Haesung just says he thinks about this conversation that they've had, and he smiles and he smirks to himself, and then he says, see you then. And then he gets in the Uber, and that did it for me. Like that, it just like to the point where like when that happens, he takes off. Nora is walking back. We get this incredible shot, like back to the present day, right? Where Arthur is out on the stoop waiting for her to console her. She ultimately chooses, herself. It's not a matter of like Arthur or Haesung. It's not a challenge in their relationships, but like she chooses to maintain her idea of the past, right? Of leaving that in the past and accepting and choosing the fact that she is a different person now than she was then. And she just breaks down and cries. And like I told Molly, like, my lip was quivering. Like I was just like, if I turned off my like, oh, I'm in public, I should probably put my guards up, I would have just all waterfall out of my eyes. Absolutely killed me. Yeah,
that was definitely the closest I got, was at the very, very end there when she like kind of collapses in his arm. Because it's such a great payoff from earlier when she's talking to Arthur and explaining that like Haesung has seen her cry so many times and he just had to sit there and wait. And Arthur's just like, you used to
You were a
cry,
baby.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you were a crybaby. She's like, oh yeah, for sure. Which like lets us know like, oh, he has not probably seen her cry much at all. Like that kind of gave
Yeah.
me that vibe anyway, you know. So then for her to come back and just immediately fall into tears in his arms, it's like, oh shit, this is like, that's why that got me. It's like, oh, she's really, not that she hadn't fully opened herself up, but it's just like now Arthur is seeing
Hmm.
part of her that before had only been like Hey Song's experience. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and it's the perfect intersection or overlap of her bringing that idea of who she was in the past to the present day, of like
Yeah.
that very particular quality of her crying about certain things was not part of her life, and now she gets to bring that forward with her. The final shot we see is Hey Song leaving in an Uber, driving towards the future, out of New York City to wherever he's going to go, smiling, happy, obviously hopeful about maybe a future that never will come, and hopeful about another life that he will live one day.
Yeah.
What is your true cinema moment? Because I'm finding it a little hard to pick one for myself.
I mean, there's a few in here. Honestly, I might cheat and kind of do a long one that's like two different scenes,
Put
but
some together.
they are back to back. I do love the scene though after she meets them for the first time while she's getting ready in the bathroom, you know, and he's getting ready as well. And they're having that conversation and she's like, you know, lotioning up and stuff and he's getting them water.
So masculine in a Korean way.
Yeah, it was like so cool to hear her talk about that. And like the line that I liked the most was how at the same time Haesung makes her feel less Korean and more Korean. Because he is so Korean that she realizes how far away she is, I think, from her past and from who she was as a kid, but also being around him makes her realize just like how few Korean influences I'm presuming, you know, that like she has in her life and that she is very Korean, you know, given where
it does hit on that. It does hit on that immigration story of her, right? Of like, she had to abandon her roots, her childhood. And that is like what an immigrant in that situation would end up feeling and having the trauma of, and figuring out how do you tackle that 24 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. So I really loved that scene, just all of that. Obviously the humor of like, is he attractive? You know, like that was like such a fun line there.
So
It's just
good.
like, you know, just like, well, I think so. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. But
I don't know.
But I think my favorite line and probably like the true moment, and this was like the second closest I got to crying, is when they are in bed together having that conversation and Arthur says to her, like, you make my life bigger and I wonder if I do the same for you. You know,
Jesus,
and it's like,
man.
fuck, man, like that's like what better compliment could you have for your partner than that? You know, like someone that like encourages you. Like everything is just like encapsulated in that by saying it makes his life bigger. It's just like, yeah. And that just like really got me. And I'm probably getting more emotional now, like even thinking about it than I did in the fucking theater. You know, it's like, I do wonder how this is going to play for me on a rewatch now that I know what to expect and stuff, because like I said, for some reason I didn't cry there, but like, it's a beautiful movie. It's like a perfect, and that scene just like that got me probably the most until the very end when she kind of collapses in his arms.
I think that does speak to the power of the script, of like, they're such pivotal sentences and combinations of words that can stick with you. Even if like it didn't do it for you in the theater, like it might end up creeping up on you. Right.
Yeah.
And doing something like an After Sun did, where it's just like day later, 2 days later, you're just like, oh fuck, that was a great scene, you know? So, I do think that's good. I was also going to pick a part of the bedroom conversation, but I will actually not really cheat, but I'll go with like definitely the payoff of like the breakdown in Arthur's arms of like the understanding and the realization that past life was lived, and it was done, and it was lived out in another world, in another timeline, in another way. And I think it does innately connect with that bedroom conversation, because a couple of times to Arthur, she mentions like, this is the life I chose. This is the life I'm living. And she doesn't necessarily say it in a way of like being super convincing of like, oh no, I love my life. This is everything I wanted it to be. She is just very matter of fact of like, this is what my life is. And this is the life that I have to live. And so I think that in conjunction with her understanding that maybe that's not always the way that she needs to think. Maybe that's not always how she needs to view life, because she did want to win a Nobel Prize, and now she wanted to win a Pulitzer, and now she wants to win a Tony, and like these very extravagant things that her ambitions were too big for Korea, right? So I think it encapsulates a lot and really showcases, again, like the Oscar-worthy performance from Greta Lee of being so insular and breaking down on camera something that has been built up for an hour and 40 minutes that we were just waiting for her to explore and then explode into this emotion. Absolutely riveting stuff. 2 A1X. We've got Greta Lee and we've got romantic dramas. Greta Lee in a lot more stuff than I thought, dude. What's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly just like on her IMDb right now. It's like, oh shit, she's in there a lot more than I thought. Yeah,
she's in tons of stuff. And some of it looking like A24. So we'll go through the list here. Some TV shows. We've got Girls, which I've been meaning to watch. That's I've heard is very good. Have you watched Girls?
Yeah, the first few seasons. It's great to see early Adam Driver. Yeah. I would never steer anyone away from Adam Driver.
Never
so
ever.
Do it.
I got to get in on that. Speaking of Adam Driver, While We're Young, I guess she's the voice of a Sundance interviewer. We'll get to that movie one day, sooner or later. It is an A24 flick, I believe. The Cobbler, shout out to Sandman for that one. New Girl, Sisters, the comedy with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler.
Yeah.
I've got a quick little story about Sisters.
Okay.
My wife and I went to go see this movie in theaters, obviously way before we had children. We drank wine before we went, and we were like not borderline drunk, but we were like definitely more than tipsy.
Yeah.
And we were really struggling with the concept of like, how do we execute this? Because we got there close enough to showtime where there was like a line for tickets, and then there was a massive line for concessions, and we didn't want to miss the movie. So we like split up. I went to go get concessions, and then Molly went to go get tickets. And so I'm waiting for concessions. She comes in like a few minutes later and she's like, I didn't get tickets. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You were in line to get tickets. She goes, I was too afraid you would get the concessions first, so I just came to be with you. And I'm like, no, we literally said go get tickets. So anyway, incredible theater going experience watching Sisters. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. She is the voice of interesting person number 2. Very fascinating. What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show. The Twilight Zone. Russian Doll, Past Lives, obviously. Problemista, an upcoming A24 flick. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. She's the voice of Lila. And then The Morning Show as well. I have not really seen her in other things besides the Spider-Verse movies. And her performance in this is incredibly different than that. Yeah. So I'm going with Past Lives, whether you like it or not.
Well, I like it. Yeah, I think this has to be it, but I just want to comment on a couple others like Russian Doll, Natasha Lyonne Netflix show. She's in that. She's really good. And she's in a couple episodes of a TV show called High Maintenance on HBO, or I guess Max now.
Whoa,
I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it's essentially just like it's centered around this weed dealer who's just known as like the guy. But it's each episode kind of like delves into the lives of the people that buy from him. So there's like a lot of really interesting. He's just like the through point of everything, but it's like not really about him as much as it is about everyone else that he interacts with. So she's in a couple of those episodes. So yeah, I mean, I would just recommend High Maintenance. It's a really good show.
Oh, cool. I've never even heard of it. Didn't even know.
Yeah, give it a shot. It's fun.
There you go. Wow, look at that. I love it. Okay, romantic dramas. We've got the big ones on the board here. I just wanted to stick to like the big guns for romantic dramas because you can obviously dive pretty heavy into this. Past Lives, of course, on this list. Casablanca, Reds, Love and Basketball, Brief Encounter, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight. In the Mood for Love, Call Me by Your Name, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which gets a very overt reference in this movie.
It does.
You put Eternal Sunshine on the list. You also you wanted to put In the Mood for Love on the list, but I beat you to it.
Did.
What do you got?
Well, I mean, for the record, I didn't want to put it on the list because I wanted to just like pull it out of my ass. So my second favorite movie of all time is Casablanca. So that is like my answer. But in the spirit of pulling something that's not on the list, I want to shout out Brokeback Mountain.
Love
Fucking
it.
beautiful movie. Our boy Jake G and Heath Ledger, just like a love that like couldn't be, but that they couldn't fight. And it's just like, it's such a wonderful movie. It's so beautiful. And I think everybody should see it because it's really well done. A great Ang Lee movie. So while my pick is Casablanca, I have to shout out
Not really your pick.
Brokeback Mountain.
I have not seen Brokeback Mountain. That's like one of my biggest like gaps in my filmography
Nice.
career. So I need to watch that. It's high on the watch list for sure.
There's a lot of stuff to watch, you know?
Casablanca, I mean, it's like the GOAT when it comes to romantic drama movies. Like, I don't really know how you beat that. I was literally listening to As Time Goes By, like on the drive home from Past Lives, because I just like hate my emotional state of being. I have no self-respect whatsoever. In the Mood for Love is incredible. I mean, this movie obviously pulls from Richard Linklater, from Wong Kar-wai, from all of these greats, not necessarily overtly, but very much in that same vein of time and love. I can't not go with like one of my favorite movies of all time, Before Sunset. That's it. I think like that's the pinnacle of this kind of storytelling. It's one of the great endings of like maybe all time. I think it is truly incredible.
Yeah.
And I would shout out and say Before Midnight. If you haven't seen it yet, Flynn Slicker of Letterboxd, you should watch it. I know she's seen it by now, but you know, it took a little convincing. Watch Before Midnight. I think it's incredibly underrated. While it is not the best of the trilogy, I think the whole trilogy is like impenetrable. I think it's like the best movie trilogy ever. So, yeah.
Quite a statement. I like it.
Pretty big statement. You know, I roll deep here on the pod. I spit fire late at night when we record so late.
No, I'm not. I won't even say you're wrong. I think it's a bold statement. I like it.
That's an idea for a pod right there. Best trilogies of all time. That would be some wild stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we are now 10 years past the last Before movie. I know Julie Delpy has said she's on board. I'm sure Richard Linklater wouldn't mind making another. I know Ethan Hawke would be down.
Yeah.
When are we going to get another one?
I don't know. Make it happen.
I don't know. I want it to happen. Okay, A24 ranking for Past Lives. What do you got?
A24.
Solid. I love it.
Yeah, great. If this is all on me, but if I had shed a tear, this would be an A+24 for sure.
So you're the problem, not the movie.
100%. Yeah, self-admitted. Like it is all on me. But because of that, it's a flat A24. It's a no notes. This is great. Run with it movie. Yeah. So yeah.
What are you gonna rate it on Letterboxd?
I don't
know. How many
stars
are you gonna give it?
Find me in December. It'll probably be on there by then.
97 months from now.
Yeah, then you'll be able to see it. So
you'll be the only guy that's like, God damn, just reviewed Past Lives. What a banger.
Yeah.
In December.
It was like, that came out in June. I was like, oh, I know. I saw it then. I'm just finally getting around to it. So
I rated it 4.5 stars last week. I'm going to bump it to 5 on this viewing. It really worked for me on the second viewing. Like I said, I think it's an A+24. I do keep a list on Letterboxd of my like A24 rankings. I think I have it at number 3 right now.
Like overall?
Truly, overall.
Okay.
Whole A24 catalog, which is just like, I hate doing that. Like, I hate seeing a movie and be like, this is the best, but like, it is the best. So I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I'm not wrong, but also like, I can't stand people that think everything is the best. So I'm a problem, but what are you going to do?
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Is it...
Last time you asked me a question, I did not appreciate it.
Okay,
so
this is a genuine question this time. Is it After Sun, Uncut Gems, Past Lives? Or what is it?
You're pretty close. It's Uncut Gems. Just because, like, here's the thing with Uncut Gems, it was like my first love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, like,
it's right behind you.
It's my boy. It's Howie. You know, so like, even if After Sun and Past Lives like fuck me up more than Uncut Gems, which obviously they do, like, I will never get over the like, holy shit, I'm gonna come and I'm so sad, I'm so fucked up. Like, those are two of the greatest dialogue lines in cinema history. So
you're talking to a person whose favorite movie is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You don't have to like justify yourself to me. Like, I get it.
Justify to the listeners.
It's all good.
So it is Uncut Gems, and then After Sun, and then Past Lives.
Okay.
And then Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is like, that's that is everything that I hate about somebody to be like, all these movies that came out in the last 4 years, they're for the best movies A24 has ever made. But then like, you know, they kind of are. So like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. You just got to be true to yourself. That's all you can do.
Well, number 5, Last Black Man in San Francisco. Talk about true to myself. That's my core movie for A24. That's it right there. Awesome. Love it. Next week, hopefully talking about When You Finish Saving the World. I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
I saw this movie about a year and a half ago at Sundance in 2022.
You saw this before you had kids? Like, that's how long ago it was? Like, yeah,
it was so long ago. I'm super excited to see it again. I liked it quite a bit when I did see it at Sundance. It is a directorial debut, another one from Jesse Eisenberg this time, of Zombieland fame, right? He's probably best known for Zombieland. Double tap, baby.
I mean, and Social Network, right? Like, I can't tell if you're joking or not, but yes, for sure.
I can't tell if I'm joking or not. So yeah, this will be good. I'm interested to see if they changed like the final cut to the Sundance from the Sundance cut at all. Ben, do you have any final like past lives thoughts? I know I kind of like skipped over to what next week is, but do you have anything to get out of your system?
I mean, not that I haven't talked about it on here. Like, I loved it. It's great. I would recommend this movie to anybody in the world. Like, I don't know who wouldn't enjoy this movie. I thought it was great. I will say, speaking of next week, I mean, at some point we've just got to like, if anyone on here has a connection to the guys at Screen Drafts, Ethan and I want to come on and do A24 directorial debuts, because they keep having heaters. We just talked about one tonight. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine trying to compile the 7 best A24 directorial debuts? Like, and you and I going back and forth, like fighting each other on this. Like, it'd be amazing. I would love it so much.
That's good podcast content right there.
It really would be. Peak. So if anyone listening has a connection to the guys at Screen Drafts, let us know. We want to go on there. I love that show so much. And then, you know, maybe stay tuned also for our own draft where we might be talking about some directorial debuts in one of the categories. But yeah,
look, I don't want to give away too much, but like Past Lives is out now. That's available in the draft.
Yeah.
So that's a problem because now I'm stressed. I had not thought of that until this very instant. Now I'm worried about the draft, man. God damn it.
Have you had a recent experience of losing a movie you love before you can pick it? Is that what you're thinking about here?
I'm scarred. Yeah. You have ruined me. I can't believe I'm sitting here recording with you based on what is going to come out on your podcast next month. It's ridiculous.
We're Babylon bros now, you know, Babylon Hive, rise up.
That's not even true.
Rise up, Babylon Hive. Let's go.
You can't spread propaganda you don't believe in. That's the thing. You have to be part of the core message.
I love Brad Pitt so much.
I love Brad Pitt
so much.
I will say your tweet just fucking sent me when I tweeted like, deal alert, like, because Babylon the Steelbook is on sale on Amazon for like $25 or something. I was like, I tweeted it out so people could know, and you replied and you were like, I love this movie, and I just fucking died. It was the perfect tweet. It was unbelievable.
I love it. I love that movie. It's so good.
So ridiculous.
It's so good.
Oh, watch Babylon, you coward.
Yeah,
okay,
watch it.
Awesome. Next week, When You Finish Saving the World, going to be really, really fun. Past Lives is immaculate. I love it.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys thought about Past Lives. Obviously, we have an A+ and an A24 here, so we were super big fans, but let us know. Please go see it if you haven't. If somehow you got this far and you haven't seen it yet, like, go watch the movie. It's great. And let us know what you think about it. We are on Instagram and Twitter at 24 minutes of A24. Also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. Ring the bell or whatever you do with it, I guess, to know when we put a new episode out. Ethan does a lot of good work with it, and so it's fun to watch us on here.
Thank you.
And I'll say it every time. I love when we see those tweets from Vibe when we're like on our TV. It's like, fuck yeah.
Incredible.
Made it. We're on the big screen. I love it, baby.
We did it.
So yeah, follow us on YouTube as well because it's a lot of fun. I'm Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. Spring break forever, bitches.